Frolo is the app that several thousand single parents say has been life-changing for them in the most profound way. If you're a single parent and want to connect with other single parents and open yourself up to an amazing support network and new experiences, then the Frolo app is the one for you. The Frolo app has two modes: community mode for meetups and holidays, guidance and support, chats, and discovery to make it easy to find like-minded local single parents near you. Dating mode is a mindful, safe, and respectful dating offering where everybody is there to date another single parent. All users on Frolo are verified, putting our user safety first always. The Frolo app is free to download and use, with the option to upgrade to premium for access to lots of additional premium features for an elevated experience, which makes it easier than ever to access the incredible connections and experiences you're looking for. To download Frolo, search for Frolo, Frolo, on the App or Google Play Store, or go to www.frolo.com for more info. We can't wait to see you on the app soon. Hi, I'm Zoe Desmond, the founder of Frolo, the award-winning app for single parents that features both community and dating modes. And I'm also co-author, along with my wonderful friend Rebecca Cox, that I made through Frolo, of the book How to Be a Happy Single Parent. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Frolo podcast. Today I am joined by the lovely Natalie Ferrigno, who's a health and wellness coach helping and inspiring people to turn their pain into power after any life setback. Natalie particularly wants to help divorced and single parents as she knows the difference changing nutrition mindset and exercising has helped her on her own journey into single parent life. Natalie, it is such a pleasure to have you on the Frolo podcast.
Oh, thank you, Zoe. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. And we've been aware of each other, I think, for years now. So it's so nice. We were just saying before I hit record that it's really, really lovely to connect this way. And I had to stop myself from jumping forward with lots of questions, but excited to get to know you a bit more. So I would love to know, as I'm sure our listeners would, how did you get into your single parent journey? How did that come to be?
So it was quite a long time ago for me now. So I was happily married, I would say, and was one of those people that kind of never, ever in a million years expected to be a single parent. I was, completely and utterly in love with my husband and thought that would be it. And we had a son, and then we had a second son, and things kind of started to go wrong, but I never for a minute thought that we would end up splitting up. And my husband left me what felt like very, very suddenly and very out of the blue. And at the time, it was like the rug had been ripped out from underneath me. It was the last thing that I expected to happen. So it was like a huge shock. It was one of those things that I thought would happen to other people, would never happen to me. And my dad's Italian. I come from quite a traditional family. Nobody in our family had divorced or split up at all. So I felt kind of that pressure, I suppose, to keep my marriage together. And so when it actually happened, it was like, it was just like a huge kind of grief and a massive, massive shift in my life in all areas, because splitting up with my husband was a catalyst for then a load of other things. My life had been, I would say, quite kind of suburban and settled and comfortable up until that point. And because of what had happened to me, I was working, I was an air hostess at the time for British Airways, and I was working long haul and travelling up and down the country. And I was on maternity leave and I've not gone back. So going back to work was also not an option. So not only had I lost my husband, but I was also then facing, what was I going to do to work and to live and to be able to kind of keep my family together. It felt like in that moment, kind of everything had gone, and I just couldn't cope. I look back now and I think, God, how did I do it? And I think single parents, we are absolute superheroes. I don't think people understand how difficult it is to do it on your own until you're in that situation. It is, it takes real strength of character to pick yourself up after it. But what, strong champions we are. And I look back now and I think, wow, you did so well. I think it's a blur, isn't it? When your kids are young and you're doing the lack of sleep and you're trying to work and balance everything, you look back and you think, how did I do it? And
I know. I totally know what you mean. It's such a blur as well for me looking back at that time. And I just, yeah, a whirlwind of chaos. But then, throw the single parenting thing thrown in on top of that. I mean, even more so. But and so, how old were your sons at the time?
So they were young. So my youngest was like 10 months old, and my oldest was 2.5, nearly 3.
Yeah, so young.
Really young, really young. So it was adapting to all of that, having such tiny children. And at the time, I remember people saying to me, "Oh, it's so much better now. Imagine if they were older." And at the time, I was thinking, there's nothing about the situation that's good. This is just
Oh, it's so hard
awful.
when it's so hard because my son was 1 when me and his dad broke up. And obviously, I have nothing to compare it to. I didn't have to sit him down and explain
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Mm.
So, but yeah, I think it's just different, isn't it? And it's very hard being a new mom and navigating being a new mom, and you had 2 very young children as well, and there's you know kids are at that age as well where they demand a lot from you. You're sleep deprived and all of that, so it
Yeah,
is, yeah, it's tough.
I think at the time I did think, there's nothing about the situation that does feel like it's better. But now having teenage sons, so now my sons are 16 and 18, so I've done the single parenting journey for, a long time, much longer than I ever was, a married mother with a partner at home.
Mm,
And now I think, actually, I am grateful that it happened when they were really young because they've never known any different. So they obviously don't remember it happening. And they've got used to they've lived always with 2 parents in 2 separate houses.
yeah.
So they've never known any different. So in a way, I think, no, actually, those people who said that were right at the time. It's just at the time you can't see the wood for the trees, can you?
That's a good point. Yeah. And so your sons are teenagers now, and
Mm.
so how did you navigate those early days? And obviously you said that with your job as an air hostess that wasn't
Yeah.
possible to continue. So what did those first few months and a year, what did it look like for you?
I mean, I had to take redundancy because I didn't feel that I could do carry on doing the job because at the time, some of the long I was working with British Airways and some of the long haul trips were like 6-9 days long to like Singapore and Australia, and that just wasn't an option. Childcare is difficult enough as it is and expensive enough as it is in the UK, isn't it? But obviously there was no option to have somebody to look after my children for that longer period of time, and my ex-husband wasn't prepared to sort of step in for that longer period. So I had to leave, and it was a case of really struggling to find part-time work and freelance work that fit in and around the children because I still wanted to be there for them so much. I mean, I had my children and I became obsessed with them. I think, and I think a lot of parents can relate to that. But literally, when my children were born, I was just totally and utterly devoted and captivated by them and didn't want to do anything else but mother them. And the thought of being able, to still be with them, I didn't want to go out and do a full-time job that I would be taken away from them all the time. So I wanted to find something that would fit around them. And I mean, I literally did everything that I could think of freelance from home. I started baking cakes. I was doing birthday cakes for friends. I was doing celebration cakes for, weddings and christenings. Then I'd done a degree in performing arts and I'd kind of always wanted to get back into my acting at some point. So I started doing bits of acting jobs in and around the children. That then led to a little bit of modelling, and I started doing presenting and so bits and pieces in the media. And I did soaps, I did a lot of commercials, that kind of thing. And it worked. And I think at the time, that was for me when I sort of found fitness, which is going into a whole other area. But for me, when I had the children, I didn't really exercise very much. I was somebody that maybe went to the gym like once or twice a week. And my nutrition was nothing like it is now. And I think then if I knew now what I knew then, that would have helped me so much to be able to cope with, the physical and mental side of being a single parent. And so when the pandemic came around, that was when I lent more into looking at sort of nutrition and exercise. And I was like, I've learned so much, but I want some sort of education behind my name, and I want to be able to help people. And that's what turned into health coaching.
That's amazing. And thinking about, single parents who are busy, overwhelmed, sleep deprived, can't, maybe afford a gym membership, can't find the time to get to the gym. Are there any sort of tips and tricks that you can share that are easy to adopt for anybody that will make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much that you can do. And yeah, not everybody wants to go to a gym. Some people can be quite intimidated by a gym environment, and like you say, not be able to afford it. But any kind of movement is key into, the endorphins that are released when you exercise. There's, it's a feel good factor that you can get from literally anything. And that might be, a 10-minute walk outside. It might be doing something on YouTube at home. It might be a yoga class. It might be joining a hiking group, a dance class, absolutely anything where you get up and move your body. 30 minutes a day, if you can manage it, a few times a week will make a massive, huge amount of difference. And in terms of kind of like eating and diet and that kind of thing, I started to lean more and more and more into just learning to like cook and eat food that was as natural to its sort of natural state as possible. So, like before I became a health coach and before I was a single parent, I would eat processed food. I drank quite not a lot of alcohol, but probably a normal amount. I, you know, I was just living a lifestyle that was very different to the life that I've got now. And simple hacks and things that I changed. So eating sort of more natural foods and moving away from processed carbs and a lot of sugar just massively helped my ability to be able to do everything better. And, it wasn't just a case of my diet and my nutrition, my mindset massively changed as well. So there was things like meditation that I'd never ever thought about before. Simple things like having a vision board and thinking about like manifesting what I wanted in my future. Waking up in the morning and doing a gratitude list, thinking about all the things that I was grateful for, because it's so easy to get into a negative mindset, particularly when you're in a space where things aren't going well or your life is, not turning out perhaps the way that you think it would do. And those small things like sitting up in the morning and thinking, what am I actually grateful for? And that can be really simple stuff. And it can be big stuff and little stuff, that there's clean water in the tap, that your children are in warm, comfy beds, that you're seeing your parents, that you have a great friendship group, anything like that, just is a great reminder of all the good things that you have. And sometimes seeing it in black and white can really help.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you've kind of already answered one of the things I wanted to ask you, which was what habits and rituals you've cultivated in your life that give you the most joy. And what you've shared there sound like some really powerful ways to, for self-care and, manifesting and, having a positive mindset. And it reminds me of a retreat that I went on a couple of years ago. And there was a rule on the retreat that you couldn't, because we're so used to just, even just this inner negative self-talk, or all of that in a way that, we're often not even aware of it. And so there was this rule at this retreat where we were not allowed to say anything negative. So even if you had a terrible night's sleep and you were like, I am absolutely shattered today, I don't know how I'm going to get through this day, you have to reframe it as in, I am so looking forward to having a lovely long sleep, getting into bed early and having a lovely long sleep tonight. And it was amazing that having, sort of really having to think about everything you say and the way you're framing everything. And it's something I try and do now with my son as well. And obviously it's a complete work in progress for me, but yeah, I think it's a really great thing to be aware of.
Oh yeah, and that's such an important one, Zoe. And I think it's something that we all do, and it's having to catch your thoughts and be aware of them, because our brains are still ancestrally set 100 years ago when we were made to think and look for danger. So our minds are much more sort of ready to think negative thoughts than they are positive ones. So it's actually having to practically understand that the voice in your head is not actually who you are, and that those sometimes are repetitive patterns, and that negative self-talk can be a repetitive thing that keeps going through your head over and over again. And it's catching that thought and questioning it and going, well, is that really true? Is that really who I am? And then reframing it and going, well, what's a better way to think of this? And that retreat that you went on, that sounds like exactly the right kind of thing. But it's a practice. It's work you've got to do all the time to catch yourself and be aware of it.
Completely.
I'm such an overthinker, and with everything that I know and everything that I've learned through health coaching, I still do it all the time. I mean, I was diagnosed with ADHD about a year ago now, and that's something else that I think, as a woman in my 40s, it's having to navigate a whole different side of me that now I'm like, oh, I understand myself better. I get now why I overthink, why I think the way that I do, why I find some things difficult or different than other people. But those kind of things, like the thought processes and that way of being, as kind of, I'd say it's very much helped me with my eldest son. So my eldest son, he is autistic, and he was diagnosed when he was younger. And I mean, that was a whole journey of self-discovery, because I think as a parent, you always know yourself, don't you, when something is not quite right, or something isn't going, they're not hitting the milestones in the way that you think they would do. And fighting for his diagnosis took me a long time. But that in itself has been a whole journey of learning how to kind of navigate life differently and handling neurodiversity as a parent, and especially as a single parent. That can be very overwhelming. But my ADHD diagnosis kind of made me understand him better and made me understand our relationship better, because we both see the world a little differently to somebody who is, with what everybody else classes as a normal brain, but a divergent brain, the way that most of society sees things.
Yeah, and there are so many parents in the Frolo community who will relate to this, because there are a huge amount of single parents who are neurodivergent as well, and have neurodivergent children. And I'm just wondering, how have you navigated this, or is there anything that you could provide any guidance in how to navigate things?
I think, gosh, you learn so much over the years. You read books, you listen to podcasts, similar to like yourself. definitely meeting like-minded people like the Frolo community, it helps because you can feel so isolated and alone with it. You can feel very much like you're the only person that's going through it and no one knows how you feel. So having that kind of support network of like-minded people is really, really valuable. And I think it's a case of just learning what works individually for your child. So for my son, for example, I always knew that he really liked routine. And so that I knew if there was going to be any change to routine or we had to do something different, to make sure that I gave him plenty of notice and warning to avoid those meltdowns and that stress. It was also things like I knew he was a very visual learner. So it's sometimes looking at different ways of teaching your children doing things in a slightly different way. So rather than explaining things, giving him sort of anything more than two instructions, he would get confused and he wouldn't remember. So it was a case of perhaps giving him visual instructions and showing him pictures of things when he was younger and saying one thing at a time. And those are just, they're things that you learn as you go along with your child, what works for them. And, it's a massive change. And being a single parent with sort of any child with any sort of additional need, there's a whole new set of instructions and a whole new caring level that's there. But we need more people in that space to kind of talk and show up, to show other people that it can be done, because it gives you skills that you can take into any sort of professional life, any personal life. You've got all that skill set of being able to communicate and deal with people in a different way, and it is a real skill.
Absolutely. And this is what I always find so incredible about all of the single parents that I've come across through the Frolo community, because, there's the umbrella of single parenting, but of course there's lots of different, ways that people can come into being a single parent, whether it's a widow or, a relationship breakdown, or they become a solo parent by choice, or, but then under that as well, there's so many different sort of situations, and whether it's dealing with neurodiversity, or an illness, or just tons and tons of tons of ways that also connect single parents in these situations. And yeah, on just for anybody listening that might be wondering how to do that, there are specific group chats on Frollo as well for pretty much everything. So it's a really great way to connect with others who'll be able to relate to your situation and get some guidance, and and be able to just connect with others who understand certain specifics of what you might be going through.
I was just going to say, it's just at that point, I just wanted to say, Zoe, how valuable the Frolo community is. And, I'd said to you before we started talking that it was something that I wish more than anything I'd had when it first happened to me. I did feel so alone with it. I didn't know anybody else who'd even, split with a partner. I was literally on my own with it. And if I'd had, an app and just knew that there was local people in the area that I could talk to, it would have made such a massive difference. I think what you've done is so amazing, what you created.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And honestly, it makes me feel so sad that you didn't have access to Frodo back then, when you probably needed it, more than ever. And for any single parent who kind of really had to navigate that alone, because I was there, which is, I understand how isolating and how tough that that is, because it's exactly why I was desperate to find something like Frollo, and then created Frollo, because I couldn't find it. So, and it's absolutely flipped my world around as a user of Frollo. So yeah,
Mm,
I'm just sad for anyone who didn't have it, because it's so important to feel supported and connected. I mean,
oh, it really
parenting is the
is.
hardest job in the world and the most important job in the world. So, we need that kind of support and connection.
Oh, we do so much. And I think as well that I think so much of society and the media focuses on being a parent when our kids are younger. And
Mm,
I never know why it never sort of talks about the years, teenagers and young adults, because it doesn't change. You're still a parent, whether your children are, 3, 5, 15, 20. Your relationship with them changes and the responsibility that you have changes, but it doesn't stop or go away. In fact, I think when I think back to like mine being little, I thought, oh God, when they're teenagers, like I'll be done. That'll be it. And I was like, oh my God, in some ways now this feels harder because it's so much more of the emotional side of it. So, you've got the practical stuff that you're giving them more kind of lifts and taxiing and
mm.
taking them to places here, there, and everywhere. Um, but the emotional side and that lack of control when they're younger, I always compare it to you sort of keeping them alive, aren't you? You're feeding them and making sure they don't run across the road.
Yeah, yeah,
And then the older that
absolutely.
they get, then it becomes, navigating relationships. What will they do for a job? What are they going to do for the rest of, their life? Are they
I think
eating right? Are they spending too much time on social media? And nobody gives you any guidebook with any of it, do they? You just
I
kind of,
think that is such a good point. And well, I can only reflect back to my own teenage years. And my mom often tells me she hopes that karma doesn't play out in my life.
same
Um,
here, Zoe.
so anyway, fingers crossed it doesn't. Um, but and it is complicated, exactly as you say. And my son, he's still only 7.
He's 7.
But
Okay.
he's 7. But all I can see that there's more. There's more emotional needs, now that come out, and even just like little things with friendships in school, and things like that. That in obviously in his world, are a really big deal. Everything's relative, but
Of
yes, so
course.
with it
Yeah.
with the teenage thing, it does come up a lot on the Frollo community as well. There are, and sometimes people assume that everyone, on the app are parents of younger kids,
Mm.
which isn't the case. There are tons and tons of people on there with kids of all ages, and I do see a lot of posts coming up on the feed or in the group chats about, I need some of my, kids as a teenager, and, how is everyone else navigating this? So I can imagine how demanding parenting can be.
Yeah, and I think as well, sometimes those are the parents as well that need just as much support, if not
Mm,
more, because you almost then get to the other side of it that they're needing you. And
mm,
it's sort of what your role as a parent all of a sudden changes. And yes, they still need you, but there's also a sense of loss. I think I don't know, maybe I'm experiencing a little bit of empty nest syndrome at the moment. I'm not quite there yet. Neither of them have
mm,
moved out and they still need
yeah,
me a lot. But you all of a sudden find that you've got more free time and that those decisions that you help them make, all of a sudden they're making on their own. And your sense of purpose changes a little bit. And that, again, is another. Yeah, there's so many rites of passage with parenting, isn't there? But then you reach this next one where it's like, oh, well, what is my sense of purpose now that they don't need me? What what will I do? And I've always been somebody who's said, being a mum is the biggest part of my life, but it is a facet of my personality.
yeah,
I want to be a woman, and there's lots of other things I want to do, but that role has always been my biggest, most important thing. And all of a sudden, you're like, oh, I'm not needed in the same way. Who am I? All of a sudden, you look at yourself and your role in society, and your friendships, and your role as a child to your own parents. Everything changes. It's a funny old stage. I mean, mine are, I'd say, at a point where I'm lucky. I have, I'd say, young adults who still very much want to spend time with me, and I feel so grateful for that.
Well, congratulations on that, because that's an achievement in itself, from what I understand.
Yeah, thank you. It
Oh,
is. I haven't got like. Sometimes I'm like, oh God, I crave for that time on my own because I don't have teenagers who sit in their bedrooms. And then I think, no, my God, treasure every single moment, even
yeah.
when the wet towels are on the floor. And, I'm
Mm.
still the one doing all the cooking and emptying the dishwasher sometimes because I'm like, God, the house one day will be empty and I can't even go there yet in my head at all. But I know it will come at some point.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
No.
Yeah, I'm fearing that stage now, thinking about
But
it.
you've got years, Zoe.
Yeah, okay, I'll calm down. And can I ask about
Mm.
dating, which is a topic that our listeners are always intrigued about and curious about. So, how has navigating dating as a single parent been for you?
I mean, I think I think in general, for me personally, the older that I get, the more confident as a woman I become. And I think every relationship teaches you something. And even the ones that don't go well will teach you perhaps what you want for next time or what you don't want for next time. I mean, I set my standards really high, as I think we all should do. There's a really sort of small select group of pool of men, I'd say, that I'm prepared to date because my life is so kind of strong and happy on my own. I'm so independent. I think that's one of the things that's our strengths as single parents.
Mm.
A lot of us, you're living independently. And I'm doing everything for myself. I've got my own career. I've got my own home. I've raised my boys on my own. So it puts you in a great position to not settle because you think, well, that person has to bring something into my
Oh my
life.
God, I so know exactly what you mean. And I love you've
Absolutely.
articulated it so well. It's the kind of irony that I think, on some dating apps where, it's, viewing kids as baggage, and,
Oh, not at all.
you're almost supposed to feel grateful if someone
Oh,
would consider dating a single parent, which is what led me to create Frolo dating, so that
yeah.
there wasn't any of that. But the irony is that actually my standards have gone up
Too
so
right,
much.
Zoe.
Yeah. And and I've learned, I've got this. I'm independent. I can run my own ship.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
there's such freedom and liberation in that. So I love that. I love that that's where you are.
Yeah, and like you say the same about your children. Like I'm like, do you know what? I have got my shit together and I have got an amazing family. And what are you going to bring to the table? And
Mm,
my children are. I mean, sorry, I keep saying children, like the little. They won't like me saying that. My young adults,
yeah,
they are, an absolute pleasure and a joy, and they are an addition to anybody's life. And I'm like, you're really lucky if you get to be a part of our tight knit unit of
yeah.
three because we're amazing. Do you know what I mean? And that's how I think we should all think about it.
Absolutely. Here, here. And finally, I mean, there's probably lots of people listening who are like, Natalie is a legend. How do I get to work with her? So yeah. Can you let our listeners know, yeah, what does working with you look like? What's a kind of, yeah, and what are some of the things that you can help people with, and how do people find you to connect with you to do that?
Sure. So I always say I became the coach I needed to see when I was at that point. That's why I became a health coach because I wanted to help people with their nutrition and the mindset when they were in a bad place. And my ethos has always been turn your pain into power. And I do think the worst things that happen to us end up being the best. So for me, I trained in health and nutrition because I just knew that I didn't just want to just look at one aspect. So I didn't just want to look at nutrition or just fitness because, you can go to the GP and they don't have the time to do a deep dive or look at the non-acute problems. And quite often people can be feeling unwell but they never really get to the root cause of what it is. So my approach is sort of a 360 approach. So I look at the mind and the body and everything in equal parts and look at what's out of balance. So that might be, your nutrition, it might be your sleep, it might be your stress levels, it might be your relationship to money, it might be personal relationships. So what I do is, if you come to me for health coaching, we'll sit down and we do an initial consultation that's an hour long, where I just really get to know you and find out what it is that you want to work on. And, I have to fit with you just as much as you have to fit with me, but it's a very relaxed, informal first session. And then after that, if you did decide that you want to work with me, then I tailor a plan around you where we would get together once a week. And it's very much focused on what the person wants to work on, with a view to kind of keeping all the parts of the pie, which would be your nutrition, your exercise, your mindset, sleep, stress, all of those things, looking at them all together and working out what needs working on and what perhaps is good that week or that month. I'm on Instagram. That's basically probably the easiest place to find me, where all my links are, Natalie Ferrigno. And then in my bio, there's links there so that you can book a coaching call with me and see all the other bits and pieces that I do. So I do women's circles as well, if you're local to the Manchester or Cheshire area, which is just an opportunity for women to get together and just talk about a lot of the stuff like what we've been talking about today, Zoe, and all the other sort of bigger issue stuff. I think so many women feel in general isolated or like they can't talk about stuff. And when women come together and we talk, we then realise that, God, I'm not alone, that, perhaps you're going through perimenopause or anxiety, or you're having relationship issues and you think it's just you, and then you talk to people and you're like, oh God, I'm not on my own. And we feel so much better when we share. Sometimes that can be with, bringing a friend, and sometimes women come on their own, and it's just a really nice supportive way of getting to know other women.
That's amazing. Oh, I want to talk to you about maybe hosting one for the Frolo community virtually, because that would be incredible. And yes,
that's a great idea.
I know people would jump at that. So let's we can chat about that after. But yes, and I will make sure that we get all the links in the show notes for everyone listening as well, and in how to find you. So Natalie, this has been such an enjoyable conversation, and thank you for sharing so candidly about your journey and your life, and I know it will inspire many, and I just think you're a strong, amazing woman, so keep doing what you're doing.
Oh, Zoe, thank you. That's so kind of you to say. Thank you so much. And I just wanted to say as well that coming from a woman who's sort of 15 years on, 16 years old maybe, from perhaps, some of the people in the Frolo community who are at the beginning of the journey, I just wanted to say that, at the time, it isn't easy, and you do think that you're never, ever going to get over it. But if I could look back to where I was 15 years ago, I'd look back with a wry smile and say, you can flip the script, and it might seem like it's awful, but there are actual sort of real positives to it. And sometimes the worst things that happen to us end up turning out to be the best. And it's the place where we learn and grow. And I'd never be at this point in my life and have the things that I have if it hadn't have happened to me. So I'm actually grateful to be a single parent now. I just think that's something that's really worth remembering when you're at the point where you think, oh God, when am I ever going to feel okay? You will, I promise.
100%. And I think that is such a beautiful note to finish on. And thank you for sharing that. I couldn't agree more. It is actually, it has been the biggest gift for me, although it absolutely didn't feel like that at the time. So yeah. Well, Natalie, thank you so much. And yes, we will connect about the Women's Circle, the Women's Circle meetup on Frolo.
Definitely, that would be amazing. Thank you so much, Zoe. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Keep doing what you're doing. It's amazing stuff. I'd love to see you shine.
Thank you. Right back at you. And thank you so much, everyone, for listening to today's episode. And that's a wrap for this week. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you did, then I have one small favour to ask. Please can you take a minute to subscribe to the Frolo podcast and give us a rating and review. This really helps other single parents who might benefit from it find us. The Frolo app, which is fully user verified for user safety, is available on the Google Play Store and the App Store, and you can find out more info and download links at www.frolo.com or follow us on Instagram at Frolo app. And you can purchase your copy of our book, How to Be a Happy Single Parent, at all the major book retailers. Until next time, have a great week.